he's starting to walk down that path again where he's opening himself up for a lot of second guesses, a lot of criticism, and a lot of heat based on like the decisions that he's making. And if
Yeah,
it
I
ends
mean,
up
I
really
don't think
hurting,
that any of that can be in his purview. I don't think he can be thinking
no,
about
no,
if
he
I do
shouldn't.
this, they're going to say that. Hey, I mean,
No, no,
you're
no,
winning
no.
the series. Here
Yes,
you adore me. You just need to sink one more punt.
yep.
So,
But like but that's what he's doing. Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS network. 86th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Sign up for our premium membership. You get all of my writing about the NHL and the Bruins sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write for the Boston Sports Journal. Check out bostonsportsjournal.com for my columns after games, notebooks every day. Right now, if you go there, you'll find a column about me questioning why Jim Montgomery fixed something that wasn't broken for Game 5, making lineup changes that led to a thorough dud on the ice. With me today, a longtime friend and colleague, Mick Colageo. Mick, please tell everybody where they can find your work.
every Sunday I write a column for BostonHockeyNow.com, and I appear in periodical issues of the Hockey News when they do Prospects Yearbook, Money Power, right in the Bruins part of that. And I have my blog Rink Wrap that I link to X and Facebook on game nights at home.
Very nice.
Maybe on the road if the Bruins survive this and go to Florida. We'll see.
That's right. Yeah, Mick loves to go to Florida. Well, check that out. Check out all of Mick's stuff. It's great stuff. Let's also thank our sponsors. Speaking of great stuff, Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll right in. David Pastrnak shots on net. Charlie McAvoy block shots. Jeremy Swayman saves. He was excellent in Game 5 again in the
Yes,
series.
he was.
It's fun and pretty simple. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's download the Prize Picks app today. Very easy to download and use. And use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And let's also welcome a new sponsor to us, Game Time, a new sponsor with Pucks with Haggs. GameTime.co is where you'll find the information about that. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. With the NBA playoffs going on right now, Game Time is something you need to know about. If you want to maybe try to get to the Celtics Heat, or get to the next round of games, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. And just download the Game Time app today. You can get last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This is something that you want to check out and you're going to be interested in, especially if you want to catch all of the NBA playoff action that is fantastic, as they used to say in the 1980s commercials, Mick, back in the day. When Ahmad Rashad and Will Obey used to talk about the NBA on
Bay. Wow.
good times. Those are old throwback names right now. But thanks a lot to Game Time for joining the Pucks with Haggs podcast as a sponsor. Good stuff. Check them out. All right, Mick. The Bruins lost 2-1 in overtime in Game 5. With a chance to close out the Toronto Maple Leafs. Very similar circumstances to losing Game 5 last year against the Florida Panthers. So I'm sure you'll excuse the Bruins fans if there's a little deja vu and a little more sort of panic after seeing what happened last night and seeing like some similarities between that and Game 5 with a chance last year for the Bruins to close it out home as well. I will open up with what I just said, and I think it's the biggest take I have from the game is Jim Montgomery fixing something that wasn't broken, taking out Johnny Beecher, putting in Justin Brazeau, who had not played in a month. Johnny Beecher is the best, most effective guy that the Bruins have had in the faceoff circle in the playoffs, winning 54.8% of his draws. Yes, he was 1 for 7 in Game 4 on the faceoff circle, but he still got their best faceoff winning percentage by a large margin, despite not being good on the draw in Game 4. The Bruins proceed to go 4 for 20 in the faceoff circle in the first period. They lose 40% of the draws all night. Trent Frederick loses one clean to Max Domi that sets up the first goal. I mean, you want to complain about the Bruins not having enough offense or not putting enough pressure on the Leafs. A big part of Jim Montgomery's system and his offense is winning the faceoff, possessing the puck, having the puck, and winning those draws. And they got destroyed. Max Domi was 10 for 10 in the first period. He killed them. He was 12 for 14 in the game. So that's one thing. You bring in Brazeau, who hasn't played for a month. You take out Beecher, who's your most effective faceoff guy, for a team that doesn't have a lot of good faceoff centers. Let's face it, they don't. So that's one. The other one, you take out Kevin Shattenkirk, you put in Matt Grzelcyk. Matt Grzelcyk looked very rusty and not good in the first 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes of that game. His first couple shifts, he kept skating the puck right into Maple Leafs players. Had a couple of giveaways, even if they weren't on the score sheet. Struggled in the last shift that ultimately led to Brandon Carlo icing the puck, creating the defensive zone faceoff that Toronto scored on. And then fast forward to overtime, Grzelcyk was sort of okay in the game, not really great. Fast forward to overtime, John Tavares in overtime sees that Matt Grzelcyk is the one defending him, simply puts his shoulder down, bowls his way to the net, creates the loose puck in front that Matthew Nye scores on for the game-winning goal. And these are the problems when you have Matt Grzelcyk in the lineup. I love Matt Grzelcyk. I love his family. I think he's a good kid. I've always liked him. He's had a great run with the Bruins. But how many times do we need to see him be a liability defensively in the playoffs, especially in things like overtime, before you say to yourself, we shouldn't be looking for reasons to insert him? Like you're fine and you have confidence in him if an injury creates a situation where you have to put him in. But I think like forcing him into the lineup like they did for that reason, and then also taking Kevin Shattenkirk out, forces you to now change what you were doing in the power play, which was working so well up until this point in the series. And if you saw last night, it was back to McAvoy, Pasternak, Marchand, DeBrusk, Coyle, all in the same power play unit, a very front-loaded top unit that did pretty much nothing with their power play possession. And you take away the two equal power play units where they had been split up and they'd been so good in this series. So it looked to me like there were significant changes that happened as a result of the two lineup alterations that Jim Montgomery made going into that game. And he essentially was fixing something that wasn't broken. And I think it led to the bad start, and it led to just the generally underwhelming performance that we saw last night. And I think it was overcoaching. I really did. I don't know what you think, Mick, but that was my biggest impression coming away from that game.
And the Pucks with Haggs podcast has been brought to you by
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is so easy to play. I can make my Celtic picks and make my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals and easy gameplay and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. Celtics and NBA fans, you can get in on Prize Picks in 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. On Prize Picks this week, I'm selecting Jason Tatum to dish out more than 5 assists and his teammate Jaylen Brown to have more than 22.5 points. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
Yeah, no, I really can only augment what you've said here. I would qualify one thing and say that Freddie only took 3 D-zone draws all night. He won one of them. The McCabe goal was one of the 2 he lost. The crippling part of not having Beecher is that Pavel Zacha had to take the majority of those D-zone draws, the overwhelming majority. And at 5-on-5, he only won 1 out of 5 D-zone draws. And if you're looking at why this game went the way it did, you don't need to look much further than the sustained pressure that the Maple Leafs were able to have in the Bruins zone over and over and over again. He also went 0 for 5 in neutral zone draws. Now, this is important. Why aren't you bringing up Charlie Coyle? Because he's a right shot. If you're in that dot and that's the side that the Leafs keep dumping on. And we said this before the series. They're going to do the soft dumps to that right wing corner, which is the left shot face off. They're going to try to create their pressure off that side to make to test Hampus Lindholm, to test Wotherspoon if he's in the lineup, to certainly test Grizz, and try to work it. And they did it very effectively in the first period. Now, could we just put this in the file cabinet? This file cabinet for the Bruins game 5 up 3-1 at home is probably, I mean, it goes back to my teens, you know, with the Rangers in 1972. But that file cabinet is longer than the one with Jim Carrey in the movie Bruce Almighty. You know, that's a long file cabinet. And so is it another flat dud like we've seen several times before in the new arena era? You know, I felt that way watching it, but the mechanics of it were because they couldn't get puck possession. They could never start with puck possession when they were taking left side draws, either in the neutral or D zones at 5-on-5. And their 4-on-5 numbers were not, the PK numbers weren't as bad. They actually weren't, they were kind of like passable, but they did lose a few. Yeah, that's a big one. Now, as far as the Grizz part goes, I feel like I'm the first one who ever beat the drum on this, that was I've been like this since 19. This is a bad matchup, and I never agreed that Grizz should play with McAvoy. That this is a matchup problem because he either gets injured or he gets overwhelmed with the physicality. Now, Tavares is really a kind of a welterweight, middleweight kind of a player, not a heavyweight. And he pulled the old high school, put the puck way out here.
I'm just going to bull rush you to the net.
D, and, and straight arm him all the way to the net.
Yep.
Now, he doesn't get to cut the net and make the play himself, but he made the pop, and Nyes was right there. And that's the ball.
And Tavares is a smart guy, Mick. I'm sure he recognized immediately who he was one-on-one with.
Absolutely.
He could overpower him.
That
physically.
Was a veteran move. It was a veteran savvy move to say, hey, I got Grizz one-on-one. Let's try this out. And it was the oldest hockey play in the book. I've seen Phil Esposito do it 1,000 times. And he just leaned in, put the puck outside, shielded it Yager style, and said, let's see what happens. And they get the goal. Shame on the Boston Bruins for not protecting Grizz's matchups. I've never been I think Grizz is a wonderful hockey player who skates incredibly well and moves the puck at an elite level. But he needs to be in protected matchups in the playoffs when it becomes minefield hockey. And this is a situation that I am basically I'm almost desensitized and sort of living with this situation that to me is the Arizona Coyotes of the Boston Bruins. They continue to roll out this matchup situation, expecting that someday they're going to wake up and it's going to be okay. It's never been okay, and certain teams just exploit it better than others. I've been shouted down on X so many times over the years. Oh, Mick, he's fine. They're fine. You're not looking at the right things.
It's because you're going against the entire BU alumni, Mick, on Twitter.
Talk to me in April, or May,
Because all the little Terriers fans want to see their Terriers defensive pair.
God bless them. So, say, oh, they have a lot of problems. That's just not, you know what? If you have a problem that is not going to fix itself, you have to, in an ideal world, Grizz doesn't start making Torrey Krug money. He doesn't get up so high. He's 3.6, and that's why they didn't pay him. That's why they didn't extend him. He's at a point now where he's in the Krug zone. They have to let him go now. They can't keep escalating his salary because they're not going to play him up going forward.
I think his play is also deteriorated too. He's not even as good as he was 3 or 4 years ago too. He's getting closer to 30. He's too expensive, and it's also, I think he's hitting the plateau and starting to go down as far as his performance goes.
It's been a lot less consistent for him. He hasn't put together longer stretches of his best hockey. in the last couple of years. I'd say that that's true, and I felt like that was probably true due to the injuries and surgeries and
Yeah,
things that he's
of
gone
course.
through. Now, do
Wear
those
and
have a
tear.
permanent effect on him going forward? I don't know. Sometimes it takes a whole season for a guy to get over stuff like that, and then he's great again. And he might
Yeah.
be with another team, and he might be with the Bruins if they didn't make so much money and they could play him on the third pairing and spot him in situations where the game isn't what it was last night.
Yeah, but even at his greatest, his offense isn't gonna allow you to overlook some of the deficiencies he has. Because with Krug, you could do that. He produced so much. He was so good on the power play. I think you could overlook some of the things, some of the blemishes, some of the things that could be exploited because he was so good in those areas. With Grizz, it's not the same thing. Like he's a good puck mover, there's no question, and he's good defensively when it comes to putting out fires before they get deep into the D zone around the net. Like he's good, a good fundamental
He actually
defenseman,
made a couple of great plays last night.
a good
But
skating
that
defense.
doesn't change the fact that he's a
No,
mismatch in a
yes,
situation like the one that ended the game.
yeah.
And Boston Bruins have continued to roll this out like it's going to change.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely driven me up the wall because to me, it's a DQ for winning the Stanley Cup. You can't win the Stanley Cup if you can't match up.
Well, and that's, I guess, where I wonder how much of this is, you know, how much of this is the Bruins players wanting Grizz to be in a pairing, influential Bruins players wanting Grizz to be in a pairing with McAvoy, wanting McAvoy to be on the top power play unit and wanting all of those players to be together on the top power play, and sort of you're fighting against, what a lot of the players would prefer in some of the choices you were making when things were going well in this series. And if like the changes in any way are about like not placating, but like sort of, you know, uh, listening to the lobbying and making changes based on that. Like, I don't know that to be true, but like, I wonder if that's got anything to do with it because like on its face, the amount that has to change is pretty significant in the two lineup changes that they made to fix what's not broken after you won two playoff games when things were going really well. You put in a guy in Brazil who hadn't played in a month because he was injured. I just don't get it. Like I don't.
I think the theory is that you're up 3-1. This is your first opportunity to give some people a taste of the playoffs in order to find out because you figure if you
You
get where
can't
you
do
really
that.
want to go, you're going to need everybody
I
sooner or later. So
Yeah,
why let them sit for 4 weeks?
but you can't do that. You can't like look at playoff games like we're in the driver's seat. If we don't lose this, it's fine. Let's get some guys in case we need to play them against Florida. Like how many times have they told us we're in the moment? We're in the moment. We're only
Would you
thinking
have
about
been
now.
okay
We're
with
not
that?
thinking about this. We're
What
doing
about
that.
Flame
Like
Love?
you can't do
Would you have been okay in Game 4 if they're up 3?
what's that?
Would you have been okay with some of this tinkering in Game 4 had they been up 3-0?
3-0. I mean, maybe, but like not if you're gonna try to like sell us that you're laser focused, tunnel vision on the moment and what's going on right now, and all you're worried about is this game, and like and to top it off, like Steve, I'm glad Steve Conroy asked the question because I was going to if he didn't, I was ready to do it. And it was the question that ended the press conference when he asked, like, did you think that what was the thinking behind the lineup changes, and did that add to what the disjointed play that we saw on the ice? And Montgomery basically poo-pooed it quickly and said that, oh, we made 3 changes in game 3,
Yeah, I know. I
basically
remember that.
intimating like that, it's no big deal. What happened in game 2 that necessitated those changes in game 3? They lost game 2. That's why they made changes going into game 3. Like nobody's going to question making changes after you lose because that's when you're supposed to make changes. That's when you make adjustments. When you've won 2 in a row, when you have a stranglehold in the series, when you have the Leafs players bickering on the bench, when Austin Matthews is not in the lineup, you drive a stake through that team in game 5. You don't
Well, that's
screw
how I
around.
felt it had to be because I didn't feel like they were better. And this was not the Rangers against the Capitals.
No.
This was not a team that didn't belong there and just somehow won a 4-team lottery of teams that were going to get swept.
I could
This was not
easily
that.
see Matthews coming back in game 6, going off in Toronto, forcing a game 7, and then they're stuck. They're in a game 7 against Toronto where a couple of bounces could end their season. And because they were fooling around with game 5 or whatever they were doing, like making those lineup changes. Like I just don't, I feel like Jim Montgomery tinkers a lot and sometimes overcoaches and overdoes it as far as changing up the lines, as far as changing things. I think there's a lot of impatience with him, and there's a lot of sort of overdoing it sometimes or overthinking it with him a little bit, especially, in situations like this. And I think this was one of those moments. And there's going to be, just as there was a lot of second guessing after last postseason against Florida because of some of the decisions that were made and not made, he's starting to walk down that path again where he's opening himself up for a lot of second guesses, a lot of criticism, and a lot of heat based on like the decisions that he's making. And if it
Yeah, I
ends
mean,
up
I
really
don't think that
hurting,
any of that can be in his purview. I don't think he can be thinking
no,
about,
no,
if
he
I do
shouldn't.
this, they're going to say that. Hey, I
No,
mean,
no,
you're
no,
winning
no.
the series, here
Yes.
you ignore me, you just need to sink one more putt.
Yep.
But
Like, but that's what he's doing though. Like, you start to, just like, remember when we talked about the goaltending, and like I've said a lot that I've sort of formulated opinion on Linus Ullmark as a playoff goalie at this point. Like Swayman, I hadn't, because I hadn't seen enough of him, but
yeah,
Ullmark,
we talked about this in the regular season, way back.
I'm starting to like form that opinion about Jim Montgomery as a playoff coach as well.
Yeah, I
Like,
think you're premature in both cases. I'll just go on the record there. But
yeah,
because I do think that they're thinking what they're thinking and they're not thinking what you're thinking. But when you get to but you're being a little more pessimistic, and you're kind of on the teleological sort of end of what's the end game of how we lose this thing, and
yeah,
then what we're going to say about all this. That's our purview, and that's justifiable to be that way because we're
totally.
the ones who have to talk about this when it's over.
But Mick, if that's going to be the case, right, and you have like sound thinking about what you did, you got to come to the press conference after the game is over and say, this is why we made the changes. These are the reasons. Like, come and give us some evidence or your thinking or some sound logical reasons why you did what you did, instead of being like, oh, we did stuff in game 3 and it was fine. Like that is not you can't do that. Like, he got really defensive about it. And like, it kind of tells me that there's like some insecurity or some stuff going on there. You know what I mean? Like, you got to come in prepared afterwards and be like, this is why we made the changes. I don't think it had any impact. We'll continue to do what's best for the team, blah, blah, blah. But have a couple reasons why you put Brazeau and Grzelcyk into the lineup. Like, don't leave it in the air like that and look
Until
so
it's
defensive
over,
about it. Like,
until it's
he
over,
looked,
we're
he
not gonna
looked
get
to me
honest
like he
answers.
was even second guessing himself when he was talking to us. You know what I mean? Like, that's
We don't get honest answers in the regular season. How are we gonna get them now?
no, it's fine, but don't look like you're
You're not
defensive
letting us
and
in
almost
that
second
room.
guess. Don't look like you're a defensive and almost second guessing yourself when we ask the question afterwards. Come prepared with the facts and come prepared with the reasons why you did what you did.
Oh, they knows exactly why they did what they did, and he could probably recount the minutes of the meetings, but they're not letting us in there.
No,
So.
but I don't think this was about not letting us in last night. I think he was frazzled after that game was over. Like, not being able to, like, he's like, I can't even explain it. We just didn't come to play. And then you ask him about the lineup changes, and he points to like game 3 when it was after a loss, why they changed the line. There are certain moments where I think he needs to be better explaining things, and he needs to be better as sort of the leader and the voice of that team after a loss like that. And I just didn't think last night was one of those.
I didn't feel like it was, you know what, I was only there for I only made it there for the last question. And I heard that last question and the answer. And when he was done, I felt like, well, that was as good as this was going to get. And I don't feel like I missed much. So
No, I mean, the accountability was there at the beginning. Basically said we didn't come to play, we didn't match what they brought. Like, obvious, like, that's true. But I think there was.
so he thinks that's the story. And
Yes.
that the rest of this other stuff is not the story. This
Right.
is not the story. This isn't how you lost. This isn't why you lost.
Right.
This is just what we're talking about now because you're asking because you're looking for something.
Right.
And it ain't there, is what he's saying.
Right.
And my issue is that,
and to a degree, I think he's right. Like, they got up 12-2 in the first period. To a degree, he's right.
In regard to the first period, that's true.
Yeah.
In regards to the winning goal, you can't get away from the fact that there was a mismatch, a one-on-one mismatch that led to the winning goal.
Yep.
One that the Boston Bruins have been just and they've been more patient with that than the Bruins have been with the franchise in Arizona, and they keep thinking that that's going to change and that there's nothing to see here. This is not a problem. You're out to lunch, and it's always been a potential problem because this moment is always waiting for you when you get to the hockey that wins the Stanley Cup or loses the Stanley Cup. This is what waits for you. And it's always going to be there at the end, whether he shows up for 38 regular season games in a row or not.
Well, that's what I was going to say is like you can get away with like Grzelcyk and McAvoy being a pair during the regular season for stretches. Like that's fine. Like you can do that if they like playing together, let them play together. Like whatever makes Charlie McAvoy happy, you can have that happen and let them do their thing when they're on the same team.
His salary should make himself happy.
I agree.
I think that over the last 2 years, I think what we can say at this point, if you want to talk trends, that maybe the room has has been a little overly celebrated for its love, and maybe that has become too influential in the decision making that is in the purview of the coaches.
Yeah. And to your point though, like let them play. I agree. Let them play during the regular season if that is what makes everybody happy. Like whatever, that's kumbaya, fine. In the playoffs, it's about winning games. It's about who's going to help them the most in certain situations, who has the best matchup, who's going to be able to perform in overtime when the shift comes. And
if the goalie hugs are real, then they'll be behind that.
Right. And if all that stuff is real, I agree. You getting excited about the Boston Celtics? Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, the entire band of Celtics players looking like they have what it takes. Even if Porzingis is hurt every once in a while and has to miss a few games, they look like they're going to put a blowtorch through the Eastern Conference and have a lot of exciting games. If you want to get in on the action, go to Game Time. It's an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. If you need to check out the website, check out gametime.co to see what it's all about. But there is lowest ticket price guarantees, event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantees, job loss assurance, on-time ticket delivery. Game Time Ticket loves their fans and they're committed to ensuring you have an outstanding experience with them. So why not go and see what Game Time is all about? You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. It's easy to find and buy MLB tickets in addition to the NBA playoffs for every kind of event in the arenas. Views from all seats in the venue, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, all of that stuff. Game Time is an app worth checking out. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download it. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Game Time. But I just wonder if like how much they're going against the wind with some of the decisions that they're making, with some of the the power play makeup, the pairings, like all that stuff. I don't know. I just wonder if I hope that I put it this way. I hope that's not a factor. I hope that's not one of the reasons why they made the changes that they did. Is to just because that's what everybody sort of wants in the room. I hope it was more about like X's and O's. These are the reasons why we're putting these guys in. This is why it's happening. Because at least there would be tangible reasons you can look at and say either I agree with this or I don't. But when you don't explain yourself, when you make changes like that afterwards, you open yourself up to us like wondering like why they did what they did.
Well, Monty has an availity today, right? A Warrior.
He does.
Because there's an optional at 11:30.
Yes.
So maybe he speaks and maybe he opens, pulls the curtain on the Wizard of Oz a little bit so we can see what's going on with that little funky machine back there.
I mean, I hope so. I hope it's more of that than like we're focused on Game 6 and we're not going to talk about what happened in Game 5 anymore. Because I think people want to know. People want to know why the changes were made to the lineup. All right, Mick. Going into Game 6 in Toronto, Like, obviously, they won 2 other games up there. They can win again in Game 6. Um, yeah, what changes, if any, do you make? Do you even think about going with Ullmark instead of Swayman, who Swayman was the best player on the ice for the Bruins in Game 5?
As he was in game two, as Elmark was in game two.
Right. He was awesome in that
To me,
game.
they were almost carbon copy performances.
Yeah. No, he was excellent in that game. I don't fault him for anything that happened. He made, there were several times the Bruins let up like 2-on-1s where he made saves. One of them was in the third period when Domi and Bertuzzi were on a 2-on-1, and Bertuzzi got a great shot off.
Who was the defenseman on that play? I don't remember.
I
and
forget.
because whoever did that did a great job.
Oh, you know what? I think that was, no, Grizzlick broke up the other one. It wasn't Grizzlick that time, but Grizzlick broke up another one.
Broke up the other one. Okay.
Yes.
Because what happened in that play was Domi was wanting to pass to Bertuzzi and showing, and then it looked like he had a clean lane to a shot. He never took it. He kept on trying to fake shot, looking for pass. Finally, he actually delivered a great pass, but it was too late. And Swayman knew it was coming and was there waiting for Bertuzzi and swallowed the shot. So that was but that was a clear-cut case of the defenseman playing a textbook and giving the shooter to the goalie, the puck carrier to the goalie, and taking away the pass. The pass wound up going there, but it was after the window had closed on making that play.
Yep. So who do you stick with, Swayman, or do you go with Ullmark?
Yeah, I'm probably sticking with Swayman. I'm not buying into this idea that, boy, if Swayman's tiring and he's going to be tired, then we're going to come back with Ullmark in Game 7. It'll be just the opposite of the mistake of last year. No, I'm not thinking like that. If you're gonna if what I feel about Game 5 is true, and there's another day, there's a day here, and you're only going to Toronto. You're not going to Germany here. You're going to Toronto, and you got a day in between the games. Swayman feels and feeling good. I'm sticking with this. And I don't feel bad if Swayman all of a sudden, got a flu bug or came up with an injury this morning that he didn't know he had when after his body cooled down. Then I would be okay with Ullmark playing. I wouldn't feel like, oh God, we're disarming a bomb here. I feel like the problem has not been a problem. I feel like it's been a luxury. They got 2 great goalies. I'm okay with either one of them, but I'm sticking with Swayman because I'm fine with him right now. And to me, it would be antithetical to everything I've said about what they did in Game 5.
Yeah, and I agree. I'd go with Swayman too. I think he's deserved the right to continue going as long as his performance is up to par and he's still playing at the level that he's been throughout the series. I don't think Toronto feels like they solved him or dented him after last night by any means.
Not at all. Not at all.
Do you the genie's out of the bottle with messing with what wasn't, what worked well in Toronto for games 3 and 4? Do you go back to Beecher and Shattenkirk for Game 6? Do you keep the lineup as is after this loss last night? Like if you're Montgomery, you're kind of in a situation where, I don't know there's a clear blueprint of what to do next, and what do you think he's going to do?
Well, number one, if you're asking me my opinion or predicting his.
No, your opinion. My
opinion is we cannot isolate Grizz in matchups against top 6 forwards on that side of the ice anymore, period. That's number one. Can't have it. Haven't been able to do it successfully for 6 years running. So let's stop with this. And let's make sure that that's Wotherspoon in that situation, because he will buck up physically, and he may get beat on skills, but we at least know where he won't fail.
You're not going to bull rush him to the net, that's for sure.
Right. So and that was, so let's just take away something that is a proven Achilles heel. Beecher's got to go back in. Whatever else you do, you got to have a left shot face-off guy that you can count on to win a fair share of his draws.
Yep.
I won't be wrong if Beecher winds up losing a D-zone draw. It's your best chance at getting a left shot over there. Unless you want Coyle to take those draws, pull him to Swayman and have him pounce on every puck. Then you get to change your players, if you're caught in an icing or something. Whatever situation that dictates you're in a D-zone and you got to win a draw or make sure you don't lose it cleanly. right now, Domi's a machine for them, and they need to find a solution. And it certainly wasn't there last night. So they got to put a guy in there who they think might provide that solution. I think that might have been my biggest disappointment of the trade deadline, given I knew the Bruins weren't going to do anything major.
Yeah.
I thought you could, from a minor standpoint, you could still, on a low investment, low sacrifice way, you could have gotten yourself a decent left shot, stalwart, third line-ish centerman who could be a guy to mitigate what we've seen in this series so far.
Yeah, and but this is Mick. We saw this during the regular season. We know this is a weakness that other teams are going to exploit. Good teams, is the issues. Some of the issues they've had in the faceoff circle. Like, it's going to be a problem. The better you get, the better matchups you get against better teams, the deeper you go into the playoffs, the more other teams are going to be able to exploit certain things that you don't do well, that we've seen. And this is why I never thought they were going to win the cup. There are certain weaknesses they couldn't address because of the salary cap that other good teams are going to be able to pounce on and take advantage of against them. And some of them are just not, they're not going to be able to overcome adequately, I think, with what else
Well, some of your warts you can overcome if you play a certain way. Like, if you could have established we've seen since Lauko's gone out of the lineup, they have not been able to be as menacing a forecheck team.
No, because they're slow. Putting Brazeau in and taking out Beecher.
Brazeau, JVR, and Maroon all in the same game.
Slow.
That was incredible. So let's hope that experiment's done. And now, is Lauko the answer? Not necessarily. If they've just made a decision about him as a player, I do think there's an overall way that he affects the forecheck by putting speed and tenacity into it and some physicality into it, that they feel like, oh, well, we can get that from this guy and that guy. And our stars are doing it too. Even, Pasternak's doing it. Great, but you need it. You need a cumulative effect to win a long playoff series. And right now, I thought that was starting to mount a little bit, and now I don't see it at all. And I feel like that needs to come back. So maybe getting him back in there is something that I would consider doing. I would certainly have the round table and argue it out.
Absolutely. I would go back, I think, to what worked in games 3 and games 4. I would just put Shattenkirk and Beecher back in, and leave Swayman.
Yeah, the power play is a whole nother question.
And I would go back to what worked on the power play. Like, I've seen that they've slowly started to get away from what they were doing that really worked at the beginning of the series. And last night it was a complete reversal back to what we saw during the last month of the season that was not working at all. Yeah. And I think it's because those players all want to be on the same power play unit. I think that's driving a lot of what's going on here. And it's not good. Like, they need to realize what was working, what was best, especially against this penalty kill, and what was going right, splitting those two units up into equal sort of units that competed with each other. And I think, how much have we talked, Mick, about special teams being a huge advantage in this series? And granted, they only had one power play last night, so it wasn't the biggest deal in the world. But the power play that they did have was blah. It was not good at all. It was similar to what we saw towards the end of the season. They couldn't get the puck in the zone. They couldn't set up. No threats whatsoever. No shots on net. The power play has been such a weapon for them in this series. Why are they going away from it? It made zero sense to me why they messed with that and they totally changed it up. Unless there are some forces at work here that are trying to pull to get all those players back on the same unit.
Well, I don't know about that. I feel like that's sort of a conspiracy theory.
It totally is. But I'm trying to think of why you would do that.
Well, I look at it like they're saying, hey, this is our first position of luxury of being able to say that, look, we want to win 4 rounds. So we got to start getting these guys into action. We got to get everybody a taste of playoff hockey here. It's time to get this guy in. It's time to get that guy in. It's time for us to do this and see what we have here. And they probably thought, look, let's not be afraid of history. What's gone on in game 5s and, days gone by doesn't matter. What matters is where we are right now and what we're doing tonight, not what anybody's going to say about if we lose the hockey game. They don't care about what we're saying right now, and rightfully so. They
Yeah.
shouldn't. And that's why they're great at what they do. And that's why Don Sweeney's been named GM of the Four Nations and assistant GM for the Olympic team in Canada. So
Well, they're great during the regular season of what they do. The playoffs have been a little bit of a mixed bag, I think. Let's not go overboard here. And that's why we are questioning them, and that's why there's pressure on them. Like, that's part of it too, Mick, is I'm sure they feel pressure, significant pressure to have a different result in the playoffs.
Well, they do to the old man in Buffalo,
Yeah.
or Florida, wherever he is right now. And
Well,
they do, and
Montgomery, I think Montgomery has significant pressure on him to have a much better showing in the playoffs this time around than he did last time. Like,
well, I will agree with this one thing. You can be a very successful, you can be a guy who's slowly building and not have job security become a question. But if you have great success, that changes the bar for you. And this is history, what I'm talking. This isn't my opinion. This is what happens in the NHL. Once you have achieve that bar of success and then it doesn't happen, now you have splaining to do.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen again, now they're going to connect those dots and say, "Oh, you're not the guy to get us from here to here."
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that.
Well, and there's also coaches that are
series. Then I think that he's on a very hot seat.
There's also coaches that are very good regular season coaches that aren't great playoff coaches. That happens. Like that is an absolute.
You got Monty and Allmark in your in Chateau Bow Wow.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like that is a phenomenon that happens. Like that is absolutely something.
I just feel like these. I think it's way too soon to call these trends.
No, I agree, and no, definitely, especially after when they're up in the series and all that. Like I'm painting the picture of like reality that there's a lot of pressure on Jim Montgomery, and like
I agree with that.
He needs to figure it out.
Those guys say, and I believe them. I think this is true. We have pressure on us every day. And the biggest pressure we put is on ourselves. And
Yes.
I get all that. I get it and I believe it. I think that that's really true. But I do think that in terms of how the way we react, how the fans react, how Mr. Jacobs reacts, I bet he threw something at his TV last night. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I just think
I didn't get any reports of any broken television screens in the Bruins management box at the Garden after the game was over. So yeah, I'm sure Cam behaved himself and didn't break any furniture. But like,
well, the series ain't over yet.
It wouldn't be the first time if that ends up happening at some point in this playoff run.
Right.
All right, quick tweet from C Walsh 23. The offense did 0 in that game. Time for Pasta to lead their efforts versus disappearing like he has done. Pasternak was okay last night. Like he had some chances. He was not great. Offensively in general, I don't think anybody was great. Like Trent Frederick had a bunch of really good chances. I thought he had a pretty good game. But they had their chances. Charlie Coyle had a great chance in overtime. Charlie Coyle hit a post on a rush up the wing.
Yes, he did.
Hit the crossbar. Like they had a bunch of chances.
Inside of it, went out the other side.
Yep. So they have their shots. I think offensively, like the first period was dreadful, but they got better as the game was going on.
They did.
Getting chances goes. So I'm not going to put this on the offense as much as I'm going to put this on Toronto.
They were desperate.
Toronto gave everything that they had. The one concern, Mick, if anything, that you have, or the biggest concern from the Toronto end of what they were bringing, is Joseph Wall, I think, was way better than Samsonov and made a bunch of really big saves. Yeah. And that kind of thing can change the complexion of a series, too. If a goal and plays really well and gives them something they weren't getting when they were getting, like, 80 save percentage level goaltending from Samsonov.
If we're back at TDG on Saturday night, then Wall becomes a story.
Yep. Well, I think he already is after the way he played last night, for sure.
I didn't feel like the Bruins getting inside ice like I would like to see.
No, but they haven't done that all series.
The Leafs are boxing out better than the Bruins are right now.
Yep. And you know what, Mick? That's another issue that I think this team's always going to have. We've continued to say it about this team every year during the playoffs, is that they're not getting to inside ice between the dots enough, and it continues to happen over and over again. Even against what's mostly a substandard defenseman core like the Toronto Maple Leafs. The fact that they're not doing it enough is really problematic.
But you know, Edmondson has given them a really effective brand
He has. That's
of
true.
defense first hockey that
Yep.
is similar to what Mark Stahl did for the Panthers last year. Mark Stahl was amazing in that series, the way he would just reach out, grab a Boston stick for a split second, and defuse a bad situation for their team and never get called for it. Edmondson, it doesn't have has different tactics. And then last night, Holmberg became a really important player for them because he took on Marchand one-on-one. In fact, at one point, they were down on the ice wrestling, and Marchand is pulling a stick away from Holmberg because Holmberg had Marchand's stick and was wrestling Marchand. How the hell that was not a penalty? And then he violated Marchand on a different spot in the ice on the same shift, and then they wind up sending them both to the box.
Yeah.
I absolutely could not make sense out of any of that.
Yeah.
I felt like, and Sheldon Keefe thinks Marchand gets calls.
Well, and then
that was the other way around.
Linesman threw a WWE spear on Marchand too when he was going after Holmberg after the fact.
Yeah, that was just absurd. It was ridiculous. I hope the Bruins send the film, because to me that was like professional wrestling in the 70s. The officials were like part of the show, and you know, it's you know, I hate to be that guy because I reffed college tennis for 25 years and pro tennis as a line judge. I know what it's like to be an official and all the things you have to check off and think about, so that it's possible to miss things that everybody could say, how could you possibly miss that? It's going to happen. But that situation, there was a developing situation, and I don't see how you can just ignore it and say, yeah, it's two guys wrestling, it's the playoffs. No, that was blatant interference when the Bruins were in a great position to get a scoring chance. That's what that was in a 1-goal game.
Yeah, well, it all gave Jack Edwards. We love Jack an opportunity to call Steve Kazari a coward last night while it was all going on NESN. So
I heard about it. I haven't heard it.
He's going out in a blaze of glory in his final few games here, calling the action for NESN. Let's thank our sponsors. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than in statistical categories. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey entries today on Prize Picks, Major League Baseball as well, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Prize Picks has something for every sports fan, from basketball to hockey to League of Legends, everything in between. You can pick LeBron, or actually you can't pick LeBron anymore. Connor McDavid, Jude Bellingham, Mookie Betts, all in the same entry. Just get in on the action. You want to play alongside Prize Picks favorite players like Meek Mill and Sugar Sean O'Malley. You can find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Let's also thank Game Time. Game Time is an exciting app that you can use for the NBA playoffs. If you want to go to one of the games, it's an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, thank you, Game Time. Mick, thank you very much for breaking down Game 5 for me. I appreciate it.